Hey, how's it going? I hope you're doing well, because you're gonna need that stamina for this car ride. We're gonna go as fast as Itsuki Stock Hachigo. Today we're going to cover, to the best of my ability, the entirety of the Initial D arcade games, and a brief mention of their console releases. You know, Initial D, the manga/anime by Shuichi Shigeno that takes inspiration from real-life racers on actual mountain passes of Japan. Hey, wait just a darn second there, Buster. This disclaimer's a freaking liar. Mount Akino may be a made-up name, but the real-life counterpart is Haruna Toge. Don't believe their propaganda. All the locations seen on this show are from real-life mountain passes, or toges as I'll be calling them. With the grace of real-life drift masters helping to supervise this unforgettable series, such as the real-life drift king, Tsuchiya Keiichi. Do these games actually do a good job at helping you become a better driver? Well, the short of that is a quick and easy no. No, they do not. The Initial D arcade games are just that. Arcade racers. Take your sim racing logic out of here and better hope you're good at adapting to a new set of rules, because every single Initial D arcade game plays quite differently, except maybe the first three. They're all kinda like what refinements made with each sequential game. Because of that, I'll rapid fire through the first two games and give the biggest example in their magnum opus, Arcade Stage 3. The first Initial D arcade game was released in 2002, exclusively at the arcades. Developed by Sega on their Naomi 2 arcade board, Arcade Stage feels pretty floaty, kinda like a spaceship where the tires don't feel like they're really gripping the ground too much. Just turning the wheel causes insane amounts of oversteer. Understeer? Never heard of her. Really, you're not actually drifting like the show depicts, just turning really fast? But it's their first rodeo. They had to begin somewhere. Even if it meant picking manual transmission makes no sense as the shift points aren't even close to the red line. It's also important to note that the game comes with a sequential shifter, meaning you can only shift either up or down, not 1 through 6. This is extremely important to remember if you want to learn the advanced techniques of the Naomi 2 games. What made these games unique is that it has a card system where you buy an actual physical card where you can then save your progress on. This is important as you get to select the tune of your cars as you win points. You're given a few options on how you want your car to upgrade to basic tune, which is about 120,000 points. The first option usually reflects an upgrade path like a character in the anime. The other paths have alternate setups. They're not just aesthetic. For example, the marquee car of the franchise, the AE86 or 86. Tune A will give you Takumi's racing engine. Tune B will usually mirror the real-life drift king, Tsuchiya Keiichi, and C and D usually give this gentle family car either a turbocharger or a supercharger. Once you reach basic tune, you can get upgrades until you reach full tune, which is about 1,000,000 points. Full tune cars are a lot better, but just the basic tune is far more important than a stock car. The stock Hachiroku or 86 is drastically slower without its basic tune upgrades. You see, these games have a rubber banding mechanic called boost. It only applies to the versus mode, but the car behind will be given an acceleration boost so they can catch up to their opponent. Now, you may think this is cheating, but lots of players do actually prefer to play with boost on, so there's more of a back and forth between equally skilled players. Cars do handle differently, and different courses play to the strengths of different cars. So picking a car on a course that works well will give them a pretty big advantage. But boost on can even the playing field. And if you're a tryhard who needs to have boost off, both players must hold the brake pedal before a race starts. Nothing is as hype as watching someone with a stock car sitting back until their opponent goes halfway across the course before hitting the gas, and still winning. Trust me, it happened against me. The first game comes with a basic track list. You race through Miyogi Circuit, Usui Circuit, Akina, and Hapogahara. Since there's a lack of courses, you'll find races from later stages of the show scattered across different mountains, like Kai being in Usui since there's no Irohazuka in this version of the game. The beginner race takes place on Miyogi Circuit. It's incredibly easy as you can floor the entire section without letting go of the gas. It gets you used to how the cars handle in high speeds. Following it is Usui Circuit, where you're gonna have to start slowing down unless you want to brake with your face first. These are both made up courses specifically made to ease you into the game's physics. With the follow-up game, Arcade Stage 2, they fixed the shift points and made it actually make sense. The cars are starting to feel like their tires are on the roads instead of being a spaceship, and more cars are added. No longer are the Red Suns on Akina because they've brought in Akagi as one of their new courses. Everyone's favorite 48 hairpin toge, Iro Hazaka, also makes its debut here. This is also where their first home console port comes in with Initial D Special Stage. Some people will consider this Arcade Stage 2.5 as they added more cars, balanced those cars, and slightly tweaked the physics to be a bit grippier. They added a full-on story mode that goes slightly past the beginning of 4th stage. Fun fact, this is the only game where you can race Mako and Sayuki on the real-life Usui Toge, instead of that tiny circuit that's made for players to get their bearings. Nope, it's not in the later arcade games for some reason. It's incredibly tiny without much room to breathe in both lanes with quick burst corners that lead to the infamous C121, where you're forced into doing a high-speed drift. Another course that's exclusive to this game, and this game only, is Enna Skyline, where Project D race against the Toto School. Given future games' driftier physics, I can kinda see why these never returned. It's definitely got a lot of micro turns far more suited to these earlier games' driving style. Kinda, but I don't know. I'm just trying to find an excuse as to why these Toges never made it to the actual arcade games. While an exclusive course at the time, you also have Momiji Line, where the cappuccino driver broke his car trying to imitate Takumi going over the gutters. I'll cover this more when it makes its debut in the arcades. Now that we've rapid fired through the first two games, we get to the most popular of the Naomi 2 era, Arcade Stage 3, where Arcade Stage 2 had cars that were severely top tier over others. Honda Integra DC2. Arcade Stage 3 balanced the game so no one car absolutely dominates the meta like its predecessor. It's a bit slower than the last two games, but for the better. You can sort of weight transfer your car when you drift to influence how your car turns, but it also means being too steering wheel happy can get your tires to lock up in understeer and potentially cause you to ram a wall. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier, but there is a speed penalty for making contact with the walls. The harder your car brushes against the guardrails, the bigger and longer your car loses its ability to accelerate. And on the uphill, you may only be able to slowly lose speed for a period of time if you hit a wall. So don't drive like an idiot drunk on tofu water, okay? Arcade Stage 3 is a very difficult game, especially since you'll need to slow down more than 2, just to clear a corner without making contact with the wall. But not only that, there are high level exploits you can take advantage of. Now, I'm no pro, so I can't go over them in depth, but there are techniques such as the eraser, where you would shift down and quickly shift back up to get your car to oversteer more than normal, making you take turns without letting go of the gas pedal or hitting the brakes. For some reason, developers made it so shifting down gets your car to have way more oversteer than what's permitted than by just turning the wheel. So this technique lets you keep your speed while letting your car turn far more aggressively than possible. There are several more high-level techniques, but that's not the point of this video. If you want to learn more about TST and all the other ways players broke the game, feel free to check out the Initial D Arcade Advanced Guide website, or watch, I'm gonna butcher this, Falbare's video, Techniques of Initial D Arcade Stage. Alright, let's get to the courses. First off, besides the two beginner ones, you have the home of the Red Suns, Akagi. I'm saying it now, Akagi is one of my favorite courses, especially on the downhill. There's a near immediate sharp hairpin going downhill that leads into an incredibly fun, low-speed, multi-corner extravaganza. No matter how many times I go through this little section, no matter what game, I always get a hit of dopamine. It's just so good and so smooth. Eventually, after a long straight, there's a super low-speed corner that catches new course runners in a crash. you're going to be braking pretty hard after building up all that speed. The last big spot to me is the last couple of high-speed hairpins that lead directly into the finish line. Be careful not to slow down too much or you'll easily be overtaken. But turn in too fast and you'll be grinding the walls with a severe speed penalty. As they say, it's all about balance. Next we have the world famous Haruna Toge, Mount Akina. It's the home course of the series protagonist, Takumi Fujiwara. It's got this little spot in the midsection that kinda looks like a tooth to me. You come to it from some long straights, so you better prepare to slow down enough to ease on in, but not too slow as it's hard to pick up speed again here. A slight mistake makes it extremely difficult to pass you here. But the main star of the show is the 5 consecutive hairpins. If you line your tires to the gutters of the hairpin, you actually get a speed boost just like in the show. I'm not good enough to show it off, sadly, and I was kinda too fast to show you the AI trying it. I apologize. My car wasn't even halfway tuned and I was still in the lead, but skill issue I guess. Right on after we have Irohazaka, the mountain where you rarely have enough of a straightaway to let your acceleration take you into victory. It's hairpins galore here as it leads into a part in section 3 where there are no guardrails and you can jump the hairpins to overtake your opponent. That was the defining moment in third stage as Takumi imitated Kai and tried to jump the mountain on his first try, just like an idiot. In real life, there were guardrails added after the initially anime became popular, so you can't try this in real life anymore. Not that any sensible person would, of course. I didn't mention this earlier, but there are rain races when you go up against certain characters like Kenta. It's basically the same game, but a bit slightier, but it's not severely noticeable. You're more likely to tap a guardrail if you take your usual line the same way. But like I said, it's a very tiny difference, at least to me. When you race someone for a second time, the weather changes. In version 3, they added Snow Akina, where it almost feels like a different game entirely. Your car is actually more likely to full on slide. I like this. I like this a lot actually. It's like your car is actually drifting instead of just turning really fast. You need to properly slow down and find the right line to let your car slide out of a turn without tapping the walls. Maybe this is foreshadowing future games, maybe? Alright, now we get to the new courses of Arcade Stage 3. The first one is Hapogahara. The other course, wait a minute, my script is wrong. I already said Hapogahara was in the earlier games. Never mind. I'm just gonna leave this bit in. I don't feel like editing it out. This is where Takumi got the new carbon fiber bonnet and turned his headlights off at night to overtake that professional driver, Tomoyuki Tachi. For me, the defining characteristic of this track are the high speed sections where you don't really need a brake or let your foot off the gas. It's full throttle all the way through, baby. But you eventually speed your way into a few spots in the middle of the course with incredibly slow speed hairpins. Slower than anything you've driven beforehand besides that jump scare low speed hairpin in Akagi. They provide a nice contrast while you're on your toes as you adapt. After Hapogahara, we have Shomaru Toge, where Wataru Akiyama was so pissed off at our protagonist for making a legend of himself. With no knowledge of cars, he kept asking him stupid questions and bitterly challenged him to a race. The narrowest road in the game where it is near impossible to overtake the opponent if you're not in the right spot with a slightly bigger gap. While your overall speed may be lower than the average Toge, because of its narrow and quick turns, the low speed feels incredibly fast. This course will give you the biggest sense of speed despite having no real straights. If you have trouble feathering the gas pedal, good luck. Besides a few turns, you don't have to hit the brakes at all. And finally we have Tsuchisaka. It looks deceptively easy, but it's fairly difficult. The turns can be taken at a high speed, so a small mistake will give you a pretty severe speed penalty. It is the course where those guys put oil on the road to break Keisuke's car. There's a neat little warning zone of this spot and you'll have to drive around it. One of the coolest parts is there is a super long straightaway into a tunnel. If you got a penalty or didn't get the right line to maximize your acceleration on your exit beforehand, you're gonna have a bad time, especially if you have a slower car. It's a pretty toge too, with its lush greens and blues. If you really want to put your solo skills to the test, there is the Bunta challenge where you challenge Takumi's father on any course of your choosing. But be warned, losing means your points are going to be drained. He is one hard son of a gun, but you do get bragging rights. There's a port to the PSP called Initial D Street Stage with two big changes. Instead of the tune system where you earn points for upgrades, you race and collect cards to deck out your ride. Oh yeah, and they removed Akina Snow, probably because the PSP couldn't hold any more data. This is the last of the Naomi 2 games as we evolve into something completely different. Initial D. Initial D. Arcade Stage 4 drastically changes how the game is played as we enter the widescreen dimension with their new engine, the Lindbergh system. I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not actually sure. Our new tutorial stage is Akina Lake, which is a lot nicer to look at than the old Miyogi course. When it comes to how the cards feel, instead of the insanely oversteer feel of the previous Initial D games, Arcade 4 feels like you're stuck on a train track as you turn. It's an incredibly drift-heavy game where if you're not going as straight as an arrow, you're basically losing speed. When you turn, it's almost like you're stuck on a perfect circle and you have very minimal control on making that ring wider or smaller. It throws away the tune feature and lets you manually tune your cars. Not only that, you get to create and stylize your own avatar now. But do you want to hear the catch? You can only upgrade when you've ejected your card out of the machine 3 times. Yeah. So that means if you continually dump in quarters without removing your card, that counts as one session. Could you imagine saving up all those points after dumping quarter after quarter, only to realize you need to eject your card a certain number of times just to access the upgrade shop? And you can only upgrade one thing at a time when you're in the shop, so, yeah. Sadly, the only returning courses are Akagi, Akina, and Irohazaka, but we do get a proper Miyogi Toge added alongside the brand new Tsukuba. Instead of the beginner circuit, we get the actual Miyogi Toge. There's not much to say other than this course feels like an actual roller coaster with all the turns leading up to this giant circle that transitions to a low speed corner. With the epic climax of 4th stage against God Hand and God Foot, we have Tsukuba. It's extremely hairpinny with lots of gutters you can drive over. Honestly, I'm not sure how to keep describing the courses without repeating myself at this point, but there are gutters you can drive over if you're good. In the PS3 port of this game, Initial D Extreme Stage, Hapogahara makes its return. This game is kind of the black sheep of Initial D games and I don't really want to spend too much time on it. Personally, I don't dislike it, but it's definitely not one I ever get the itch to play again. And from listening to a lot of people, they just straight up don't like this game. Alright, on to Arcade Stage 5. It may look almost the same as 4, but let me tell you it plays quite dramatically differently. The biggest thing being how turning your car doesn't tank your speed quite as fast. It feels less like you're stuck drifting on a train track and feels far more like an actual car. In this version of the game, Sega wanted to make this game far more quote-unquote realistic by making you have to focus a lot more on using your brakes earlier before a turn. The game doesn't tell you this, but there is a tire wear mechanic, which is why you'll see higher level players take it nice and slow at the start to preserve their tires for when they really need it. This is the game that kinda introduces brake cancels, although it's pretty minor in this game compared to what's to come. You simply brake and cancel your brake with the gas to power over yourself into a big oversteery drift. If you don't know what a power over is, it's when you use your gas or power to break traction in the rear wheel so the tail will slide out in a rear wheel drive car. As for the tuning shop, you can upgrade once every time you insert your card into the machine, but it alternates. You will either be able to upgrade your aesthetics or the performance. You don't get a choice in this matter. it will alternate every time. What a freaking waste of the player's time. In this game, the only Toge they added is Nagao, where Kogashiwa Kai gets his rematch but replaces his MR2 with an MRS, but it's also the place where we get to see an actual Super in the show. Be careful of the empty gutters as your tires can get stuck in them. If you're skilled enough, you can do a gutter run that drastically increases your speed. But like I said, doing it wrong will stall your car, so be warned, it's a big reward attached to a big risk. Other than that, it's a fairly slow speed course with plenty of hairpins from start to finish. I love it, honestly. I didn't mention this earlier, but gone are the Bunta challenges of yore and replaced with a final Bunta race you have to unlock by beating all the other racers. Why did I wait until here to let y'all know? Well, that's because I didn't want to have to rebeat Arcade 4 just to show you guys. I did it here instead, and man, it was a pleasure to beat this game, although Bunta wasn't really that difficult in this game. That, or maybe I'm just good. No, I'm not. I'm just okay at racing games. Arcade Stage 6, Double Aces, or AA for short, makes its engine transition to the Sega Ring Edge. The driving mechanics receive another drastic overhaul with a drift gauge being added that will be refined throughout the rest of the Ring Edge games. When you're drifting, you will get a light up gauge that will go from blue to gold. The longer you drift, the bigger of an acceleration boost you get when you straighten out your car. Disclaimer, I'm not good enough to show this off in the best way possible, especially since this is the game that highly encourages brake cancels to get the most speed. When you hit the brake and go to the gas, you will induce an insane amount of oversteer where it looks like your car is about to turn into a Beyblade. It also adds tag battles that are quite silly if you ask me, but I do have a giant gripe with the Ring Edge games, and that's that the stock cars are dramatically worse than a fully spec'd out one. It's no contest. Like, if you were good enough in 3 or 5, you could take someone on without any upgrades. It's not as big in 6, but in 8, you dramatically lose speed when turning your wheel. And you can get around 1,000 points per race, and the bigger upgrades can cost upwards to 5,000 points. That's 5 races just for one upgrade, and there are tons of upgrades. Ain't no way, bro. Eventually in 7, you can upgrade multiple parts at a time, thankfully. They have a new beginner circuit besides Lake Akina now, and it's a Usui circuit, but refined to be more fun. Honestly, it just feels like a really solid circuit with a couple of wide and small hairpins connected to some pretty long straights. Kinda wish we got the real Usui Toge instead though. Oh yeah, in all the old games, you can pick any course to race at any time with the occasional secret racer you have to unlock to race, but in 6 and beyond, there is a linear story mode to progress through. I'm sad to see the course selection gone, but if you love single player games, there are cutscenes and stories attached. I don't really want to spend too much time talking about the story mode. I play Initial D for the gameplay and the courses, but each game from here begins to add side stories and stuff to give you more content. We get the final course in the show, Tsubaki Line. It's a rather cool course. It has many tight, short turns. With Initial D6's driftier mechanics, it can be rather hard to navigate. There are small adjustments to make, and this physics engine really wants you to start sliding. I find it drastically more fun in 7s, since it doesn't require to be drifting 24/7, but I will note that there is a place separating the lanes, which is a pretty cool little moment where both of you and your opponent can take an alternate route to try and surpass each other. And there was a loud noise outside. I don't know if the microphone picked that up. Snow Akina makes its return in an update, but I didn't really play the snow races until 8. It's just like 3 where you're just a lot driftier, but in a grippy game like 3, having a driftier course was a nice change of pace. In the newer games, it just makes it feel like you're on ice, which, is kind of the point for a snow stage. But it loses its novelty since these games are already becoming driftier now. Other snow courses added in the future games are Tsukuba and Tsuchisaka, but I honestly think I'm done talking about the snow maps. They feel more like gimmicks than a welcome addition to me. Sadamine comes in an update too, but I'd rather show it off in Arcade Stage 7. Eventually I was able to full tune my car and it made the whole driving experience a whole lot smoother. But I'm in this very strange zone with this game, where I'm getting faster and improving, but I'm not actually having more fun as I improve my times. There's a sense of I have to do what the game wants me to do in order to go fast, versus I have a certain skill set, and how do I apply said skill set to go fast in this game? I never really had a sense of accomplishment as I improve, just a sense of, oh, that's what the game wants me to do. It's most likely a skill issue, but after getting to the end of the story mode and never once having that feeling of one more race, I think it's safe to say this game just isn't for me. If you aren't fully utilizing the brake cancels to get a gold drift, you will not go fast. You could turn really fast normally with just the wheel, but that speed boost you lose out on is an absolute game changer. Sadly for me, it's not a mechanic I enjoy. There are people who do adore this game, so I still recommend people trying it out nonetheless. It didn't click for me, but hey, maybe it will for you. Initial D Arcade Stage 7 Double Aces Cross, man, that's a mouthful, or AAX for short, is an updated and refined version of 6. But don't let me call it refined fool you. It's less drifty and far more grippy. Isn't take it as far back as the Naomi 1 through 3 arcade games, but when you initiate a brake cancel, you're not going to start spinning like a Beyblade from part 6. Gone is the gold drift where longer drifts will give you a big boost. Overall, I like 7 drastically more than 6 as it feels like I have a lot more control over my drifts and the tires feel like they're actually gripping the road. The story mode is exactly the same as 6 but with a few races removed. I'm not entirely sure why, but you'll race in all the same courses and get the same cutscenes, but some character races will be omitted. Tsuchisaka makes his return, looking prettier than ever, but I feel like I talked about it enough in version 3. Sadamine makes its way from a version 6 update, and it's got a lot of sharp corners and sharp hairpins. With its cherry blossoms, it's a sight to behold as you go on the brakes for these low speed drifts. It's the place where Takumi crushed the fake Project D people trying to give them a bad name. And finally we have Nanamagari. This is where they race the Fair Lady Z, the place right before the final race. Insanely fun, filled with a ton of hairpins right before the midsection, into a high speed run right into another area with tons of hairpins. This is one of my favorites. What can I say? I love me a mid-speed hairpin, and this place has no shortage of them. Of the Ring Edge games, this one is my personal favorite. That's all for Arcade Stage 7. So let's move on to Arcade Stage 8, Infinity. Infinity further refined the game by making the brake cancel have a bigger impact than in 7, but not as much as 6. Your car will begin to drift when you brake cancel, but it comes at a big cost to speed if your cars aren't fully tuned. My biggest gripe is that turning the wheel demolishes your speed without any upgrades. Stock cars are just straight up garbage in this game. Full tune makes the biggest difference in this game compared to any of the others in my opinion. It's not that stock cars feel bad, just that if you're a competent racer in general, they feel too slow. I've watched people who don't play racing games make do with stock cars since you barely, if ever, have to utilize the brakes, but that's no fun for me. You slow down by turning instead of braking until you have a good amount of upgrades installed, but that just feels like a waste of time to me. But once you do full spec your car, even a guy drunk on tofu water could beat anyone grinding the guardrails like a stripper making her daddy feel ashamed. And to quickly add, this game doesn't follow the original story but kinda has its own story mode, and there are several arcs, making this the most content rich if you're after a single player Initial D game. It's even got stage gimmicks like making your passenger faint, limited steering kinda like the gum tape deathmatch, etc, etc. On to a brighter note, Momiji Line reminds me of Akagi with its wide and short speed hairpins, but if you also took Akina's first hairpin downhill and added it to the top and the bottom of this toge, it's absolutely wonderful. As stated earlier, this is where the Miata Roadster broke his car trying to imitate Takumi's gutter run on his home course. Eventually the game was updated with Hakone, an incredibly high speed course where you're constantly in your highest gear going over 200 kilometers per hour. It feels like you're looking for that slip angle more than you're drifting. There's even a few jumps scattered throughout the Toge. And if you've ever played Kaido Battle / Tokyo Extreme Racer Drift, this is the very same Hakone shown off in those games. After Arcade Stage 8 Infinity, we have Zero Version 1, which runs on the Sega New 2. I think it's called New 2, I'm not sure. It moves away from the sequential shifter into the H shifter to mimic real life. Sadly, the steering angle is brought down to 270 degrees from 450 degrees, meaning you barely have to turn the wheel to reach the limit. It brings back drift boost and kind of feels closest to Arcade Stage 7 by being overall grippier than 8, but it still feels overall driftier than 7, at least to me. But I didn't play this too much, to be honest. Gone are the rain races, story cutscenes with dialogue, and the biggest sin it makes is replacing the Eurobeat with Japanese rock music. Yes, this game is based off the movie trilogy remake instead of the manga or original anime. Version 1 wasn't received so well with all the changes and removals it made. It was incredibly bare bones. We only lose tracks instead of gaining them, so I'm no longer going to talk about them here. Just give you a basic overview of the gameplay. Eventually, Sega comes out with Zero Version 2 and makes the cars less floaty and feel more grounded, a trend you've probably noticed by now. Flawless play is encouraged as there's both tire and body damage that will slow you down for sloppy play. One cool thing is that during replays, you can have a ghost analysis where a ghost car will show you how to improve your time. There's also the option for the ever so popular racing line to show up on screen to guide you, but personally, I don't like using those in any racing game I play. The two new tracks are circuits in the form of Odawara, which looks like a giant chicken if you ask me, and the ever so popular Gunsai Toge, as seen in many online drift and race videos. Odawara feels like it's got a bunch of moderate straights leading into sharp corners. There's a spot where the lane splits, so you and your opponent can take a different route here. This course is in the spiritual successor to Initial D, MF Ghost. This is where they have their first race in the show. Gunsai Toge is a mountain I've seen showcased in so many real life racing and drift videos that it makes me happy to drive this road in the game for myself. It's full of hairpins where it rarely gives you room to do anything other than drift from start to finish. What else could I say besides the fact that I love it? Eventually, Sega had to move on. Initial D has concluded in both the anime and the manga for a very long time now. They've covered just about everything in the arcade games, besides the real life Usui Toge of course. And then we come to the modern era. Initial D, the arcade, runs on Unreal Engine 4, and I haven't personally played it as I don't have access to it, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on much. The game runs on seasons, and every season adjusts the physics to keep players coming back for more. It has the highest track count of any Initial D game and is constantly getting updates. The biggest change being you can have 4 players on a single mountain racing? I'm not sure, but that doesn't sound like the most fun to me. I like the intimate feeling of a 1v1 race against a rival. But for a party game, that doesn't sound too bad, I guess. From what I'm told, there aren't really advanced mechanics in this game, and just driving and slowing down a turn is all that you really need. I didn't get super into brake cancels in the Ring Edge games, but some people dislike how you have to learn variations of brake canceling. For example, it can get as convoluted as needing to brake, cancel, or brake, cancel, brake, cancel, just to get faster. None of that applies here, thankfully. Now that I've covered all the arcade Initial D games with a brief look into their console counterpart, I'd just like to say my personal favorite and the one I kept coming back to is Arcade Stage 5. I know some people feel this game is too slow, and having the tire mechanics ruins having to upgrade your car, or how preserving your tires makes the game boring. but I find the overall feel of this game the most fun. It's the least arcadey of the Initial D games, but I enjoy how I don't always have to drift to be fast. Now I have to choose when to deliberately drift hard to be able to corner fast, but at the cost of wearing out my tires. Right after, I have to say 7 feels like you have the most control when drifting. There's no tire wear, so drift as much as you like. The brake cancels aren't as absurd as 8, and I still love version 3 for its easy to play but difficult to master skill ceiling. The only nitpicky complaint is that you don't really drift in that game, just turn the car really fast. They're a bit closer to doing a power slide than a drift if you ask me, and yes, those are two different things. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed your stay, and happy 30th anniversary Initial D.